How's everybody doing? Welcome back to another episode of The Banker Next Door. I'm your host, Dr. Joe Berquist. I hope everyone had a wonderful weekend out there, and I figured I'd kick off the week by going into something that I think is very interesting. We're going to talk a little bit about core conversions in the episode today. I saw a great article that was just published by the ICBA, the Independent Community Bankers Association, on basically successful steps to making a core conversion, and I thought we could get into that. So I'm going to bring the article up here. But before we do, I just want to read a little. This is kind of like a little tidbit here. So core conversions can be challenging for community banks, but there are ways to make the process painless, according to the latest Independent Banker magazine. That's a quarterly magazine that ICBA publishes. More banks than ever are operating on new cores, according to the article, and it's helpful to start looking for a new core 18 to 24 months before the current contract is set to expire. After deciding to convert and calculating the cost, the article suggests having internal conversations with everyone who will be involved with the new core, thoroughly evaluating providers, and listening to feedback from peers. So all good advice. So before we delve into this, just a couple of things I wanted to put out there. So there are three main core providers. There's Jack Henry, there's Fiserv, and there's FIS. Those three companies basically take up probably about 70% of the market in terms of core system providers out there. And for anybody who doesn't know, every bank basically operates off of what's called their core system. Now, the tricky thing about these core systems is that they're very expensive. They usually come with long-term contracts, and for a bank to get out of that contract before it expires can be incredibly expensive and very cost prohibitive. So again, as the article suggests, you need to start looking basically 18 to 24 months before you decide to make this decision, and that's mainly because of the contracts and how they're structured, and just like I said, how expensive it can be to get out of these things. Now, changing your core system is if there's not much, I think, that keeps bankers up at night more than changing your core system, because it is a very scary thing, because there's so many people in the bank that have to be involved in it. It is a major thing. It can affect your customers if it goes badly, like if things don't kind of flip over, change over in as smoothly as you anticipate, it could get real ugly real fast. So a lot of bankers, for fintech companies out there that basically come in and say, oh, hey, you want to change your core provider? Usually a banker will, kind of start to jitter and shake and have convulsions. So just to give you a hint as to what that process is like. And then the final thing is, banks work with so many different fintech providers now, companies like Q2, just a myriad of companies that are out there that provide these different services. And a lot of times, these companies either need or would like to work with the core systems. And the core systems have, the Jack Henrys, the Fiservs, the FIS of the world have not always played nice in the sandbox with some of these other companies. And it's kind of taken a while. I will say, I do believe it's a lot better now than it was, say 5 years ago, definitely 10 years ago. It was like, forget it. They weren't going to do anything for you, basically. So that's it. So basically, the challenge of changing the cost, the contract, the need to work with other fintech providers that have all different kinds of systems that could be plugging into your core. These are all considerations and all major things that go into this process. So with that said, let's take a look at this article here. So, helpful tips for streamlining the core conversion process. At each step of the process, a core conversion will hold new challenges. Make sure you have the tools and knowledge to address these issues and support your employees through it all. So, and then it comes down here, basically says, when it comes to core conversions, some are bad. Some are bad, and the rest are even worse. Chief Administrative Officer and Senior Marketing Director Emily Mays heard this warning a few years ago as 200 million asset community Spirit Bank embarked on a core conversion. It became a motto of sorts at the Red Bay, Alabama Community Bank. Most banks know this is going to be a beast, and so it was really valuable to go in with reasonable expectations, Mays says. For anyone starting or considering a core conversion, here are tips for making each of the 5 critical stages smoother. So I'm gonna run through each one real quick before we get, and then we'll go through them all in more detail. So step 1. making the decision to convert. So just, be committed, make the decision. Step 2, calculate the core conversion cost. What is this going to cost you at the end of the day? And it says, sticker shock should not dissuade a community bank from exploring a core change. Yes, and you will have sticker shock. Step 3, have the right internal conversations. Yes, absolutely very critical. We'll talk about that more in a minute. Step 4, evaluate the providers. Evaluate who the big providers are that are out there. And then step 5, listen to your peers. Like, listen to what other banks have said about this process and how it can be a beast, how it can be a super, super big challenge. And then at the end, we'll talk about like how to survive conversion weekend. First, you bring a lot of alcohol. No, I kid. Okay, so step 1. So making the decision to convert. So Neighbors Bank in Clarence, Missouri, I think with 68 million in assets, underwent a core conversion in late May after 5 years with its previous processor. At Community Spirit, the prior core had been in place for 42 years before the bank converted to its new core in May of 2022. A range of timelines this broad is no anomaly in the community banking world. As of 2020, 34% of community banks had spent 20 or more years with their current cores, according to the ICBA Core Processor Resource Guide. So like I said, the contracts are long, and you've only got a few players that, like I said, basically dominate the majority of, and the domination used to be much greater. I mean, used to have, like I said, those 3 big players, 4 big players used to have 95% of the market, 10, 20 years ago. So it was even stronger back then. It was very difficult to kind of change your core provider or even think about getting out of it. So that said, more banks than ever are operating newer cores. The guide also notes that in 2020, 36% of banks had used their current core provider for 5 years or less, while only 13% said the same in 2016. So you can see this evolution. You have a couple new providers in the market. Some banks are switching over, maybe because the new providers have some better bells and whistles and things like that. Maybe work a little bit easier with some of the fintech companies that they're dealing with, that kind of thing. So, okay. For Community Spirit Bank, the decision to move its longtime core provider to CSI coincided with a push to grow and innovate. Management was keen to add services that had proven prohibitively expensive or a no-go because of its core limitations, according to Mays. We knew we had to quit talking about a conversion and take the action. Jonathan Batzel, president of Bank Solutions at Jack Henry, notes that certain organic triggers spur community banks to rethink their existing core arrangements. Some, for instance, begin looking around 18 to 24 months before a contract is set to expire. He is convinced that the best reason to reevaluate is when the core system is no longer supporting a bank's strategic priorities. Like I said, if they're adding new technology, maybe they're trying to do some different things. Maybe they're trying to open some different business lines, and they need some more help from their core system, which they're not currently getting. So Dudley White, president of Core Account Processing Solutions at Fiserv, agrees, viewing a core conversion as a business decision. A fancy new tool or technology isn't reason alone to make a switch, he says. Other community banks seek a change after getting fed up with disappointing customer service, according to Paul Jones, vice president of professional services at DCI. I hear frustration that some banks can't call in and get a live person, he says. They've got to submit a ticket, and then they might hear something back, or they might not. And if they don't hear back, their only recourse is submitting another ticket. Yes, I've heard these things over the years. Has Jack Henry, Fiserv, FIS, have they gotten better? I think they have. I do think that they have gotten better. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect, but okay. Calculate conversion costs. So sticker shock should not dissuade a community bank from exploring a core change, since the final price tag might be less than anticipated, contends Mays. This was the case at Community Spirit Bank. For help with budgeting, she highly recommends finding a consultant who specializes in core conversions. By hiring Trent Fleming in Tennessee, she is convinced that the bank saved money on its conversion. Not only did Fleming advise locking in a better price through a longer 10-year contract with CSI, he also identified savings by eliminating ancillary vendors that were now unnecessary. So Melissa McNutt, CEO of Neighbors Bank, also praised her bank's core conversion consultant, Genesis Technology Group, for providing price comparisons and negotiating a favorable contract. So, and then there's a kind of a sidebar here that says, researching a core conversion. Given the headaches accompanying a core conversion, community bankers gather information every way they can, including by reading ICBA's Core Processor Resource Guide, with chapters ranging from should I stay or should I go, evaluating a change in core processors, to contract terms and negotiations. ICBA's guide introduces community bankers to the most critical steps of the conversion process. So that's an advertisement, basically, that I'm not getting paid for. But yeah, so there you go. So you can check out the ICBA's Core Processor Resource Guide. ICBA, you can thank me whenever you have a chance. If anybody from there is watching. Okay. Step 3, have the right internal conversations. So conversations succeed when people are engaged early and often, and that's not just the C-suite, but also the key contributors responsible for making the business run every day, says Botzel. Involving the right people and keeping messages positive help when it comes to evangelizing the change, he adds. Mays agrees, noting that as Community Spirit Bank interviewed core providers, everyone from department heads to branch managers sat in on demos and investigated options. So here's what I have to say on that. So you have a couple things there. Number one is, I think a lot of times, C-suite, they look at the numbers, they crunch the numbers, they look at what's going on, they look at their strategy, and they basically say, okay, we're going to make a change. But before I think you make that decision, you've really got to go and talk to all of the main people that are going to be involved in this. And then, because you have to get those people involved, because what's going to happen is when the new core provider comes in, they're going to do training with the main people that are going to be involved. And then those people are going to train the people below them. So it's going to roll down. It's going to roll down. And if those people that aren't getting trained, the people that are going to be dealing with this system every day, like if they're not on board with doing this, it's going to make this a million times worse. So I think before you make any definitive decision as to which way you're going to go, I think you need to bring in the main people that are going to be the people that are going to get trained on the new system, and then are going to have to train everybody else on the system, and are going to have to spend a lot of time with all the employees around the bank doing this. Like I said, you have to communicate that throughout the organization. You have to get them on board. You have to explain to them why you're doing this. You can't just say, we're doing it. That's that. You deal with it. That's not going to go over real well. You have to explain this to the employees and make them understand why it's necessary that the bank's going to have to go through this, because it's going to be painful. Okay, number 4, evaluate providers. So at Neighbors Bank, McNutt narrowed the field to 5 providers before beginning an in-depth interview process. Each of the 5 providers completed on-site presentations, and 3 potential providers completed RFPs. Along with Neighbors' existing provider, McNutt then contacted references for the top 3 candidates, an exercise she found extremely enlightening. The community bank also paid visits to 2 providers at their physical headquarters, another practice she heartily endorses. So yes, basically do your homework. Do your homework on these providers, seek references, talk to other banks in the area that may already be using this core system, get their feedback, see what they think, before you make that ultimate commitment. And then finally, step 5, listening to peers. So May's new community banker colleagues who left the industry due to stress from a core conversion. That's a little much, but maybe not so much of an exaggeration though. So she braced herself for challenging times. Like looking back on how she might have improved the conversion experience, she says it would have been beneficial to stagger the timelines for the debit card and core conversion if possible. I knew it would be a friction point for customers to go through the card change and the digital banking change at the same time, she says, but I didn't know the magnitude of the pain involved. And yes, like I said, that's, if it doesn't go well, it could dramatically affect your customers, and that's what keeps people up at night. So for McNutt, the biggest challenge was the time management piece. She used a project board to mark off completed tasks and relied on weekly discussions to clarify what still needed to be done. As parting advice, McNutt urges fellow bankers to have faith in a positive outcome. Know you're going to come out on the other side, she says. Whatever decision you make, it's going to work. So, and then the last thing here is how to survive the conversion weekend. So if you've taken the proper steps, conversion weekend should be the easiest part of the process, says Dudley White, president of Core core accounting processing solutions at Fiserv. He explains that Fiserv walks community banks through a series of checkpoints and exercises that mimic how processes will look after the conversion is complete. We set out to eliminate surprises. Even so, a few hiccups are inevitable. As smooth as you try to make it on conversion weekend, there are still going to be some pain points for your customers, says Melissa McNutt, CEO of Neighbors Bank in Columbia. She notes that simply logging into a new online banking system for the first time or knowing to download a different mobile app will be a stumbling block for some customers. So one challenge for any conversion weekend is the team's fatigue levels, which inevitably are heightened given the busy days leading up to the changeover, recalls Emily Mays. And so by the time the new core was installed at the Red Bay, Alabama Community Bank, some employees had sat through 160 meetings on conversion alone. So this again, just, again, like I said, the communication, the training, all the things that are going to go into doing this. So, and then, like I said, what is this little note here? So quick stat. 34% of community banks in 2020 had spent 20 or more years on their current cores. So yeah, we already covered that. So there we go. I thought it might have been something a little bit more interesting right there. So, but anyway, so I thought this article was really great. I am going to talk more about core conversions in probably future episodes. I would definitely like to cover the big providers out there, maybe some of the little players that have come into the market. Definitely looking to do maybe some interviews with some people from some of these core providers in the future, so we can get some different takes on what they think and how the core providers are progressing, how they're innovating, how they're changing with a lot of stuff. Obviously, open banking could play a dramatic effect on this in the years to come. That's something that's definitely going to have a bigger conversation and is have to be, further talked about in the future. So, we'll have to keep an eye on that. But if I did put a link to this article in the description below, if you want to go click on it to take a look at it yourself. But with that, I will wrap up, and I will say, if you like this video, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe, as that always helps the channel. Remember, we are on YouTube, Rumble, and all major podcast platforms. Please be sure to leave your comments down below. And there's a lot of content on the channel, so please check out some of the other things. If you didn't see the BND live stream from this weekend, please go check that out. And remember, BND live stream every Friday night at 7 p.m. Hope to see you all there, and I will see everybody again real soon. Thanks a lot.